her speak, that staff was not recommending this increase. In fact, I think he specifically said that. Thank you.
Thank you. Others, Mr. Trousdal, did you want to speak? Okay. Just checking. All right, please.
Good evening, Fred Volz for the record. I'd like to bring up some other issues that I haven't heard discussed tonight on the subject of question 14 on the agenda. First of all, in looking at the overhead contributions by the various utility entities, the percentage is not equal. The water is at about 9%, the electric is at about 12%, and the wastewater is at about 15%. But in the budget documents from the finance director's department, we don't see any justification for that. And it would be very helpful to know where that money is going and why it needs to be a different amount for the different functions. Also, there doesn't seem to have been any analysis done about the utility administration function, which is taking $3.4 million a year. And with the new utility director, that would seem to be a prime opportunity to decide whether that could be operated for less money, more efficiently, in some other way than it is presently. I'll use as precedent Social Security Administration, which calculates an increase based on what they determine the CPI to be annually. And that would seem to be the same sort of methodology the city should be using in figuring out a percentage increase, if indeed that's the case. Also, I'm troubled by the advisory status of the utility committee and believe it should have the same authority to recommend to the council as the planning commission does in the city. I'd also point out that it's fiscally irresponsible to collect money from the public when there is no cogent need demonstrated for its use. And that's precisely why you would have the rate study and precisely why you would do a thorough analysis of what the capital improvements are as they are needed for this community. I'm also troubled by the RFP process and the announcement that I heard tonight that this rate consultant has already been selected with no input, no RFP process. And I think that the utility committee, whatever its format ultimately is, needs to have some meaningful input on the selection of the consultant. And finally, I was troubled to learn that the city doesn't regulate and meter its own water usage at its own facilities. In parks and other parts of the city that are using water, some of them have meters, some of them don't. And it would be helpful to know, first of all, from a conservation standpoint, what's happening and if something could be done better. But more importantly, the city ratepayers, businesses and individuals have to subsidize whatever water is being used by the city is not being paid for or somehow controlled. Thank you.
Thank you. Others? All right, we will close our public comment period. And I do have some comments on this. So I'll address the easy issue first, which I think is the deferral that Councilman Harhe is suggesting. We've done that every year to make sure that the rate increases happen in the fall. And I don't know the real reason why it wasn't written into the resolution in the first place, but we changed that in 2016 to make sure that the rate increases happened in October or September. We did that again last year and whatever other intervening years. And so I think that that's a wise thing to do. But that's a separate issue, I think, than what we're talking about in terms of how this all came about in the first place, as well as where we should be now, where we are now, and where that should take us in the future. The automatic, what's called the automatic 2.5% annual increases, and we've heard also tonight that is one more, not just an annual, but another electric rate increase next year, which was built in And so there wouldn't be a 2.5% increase in the electric until after that one happens anyway. So there wouldn't be any this year in electric, if I'm not mistaken. Those only kick in afterwards. But, the way Councilmember McManus kind of set this up was, we have revenues in excess of expenses. Well, that was expected from the get-go. We didn't just raise rates to cover operating expenses, although in the water utility we could have, because that one was upside down. But, we were breaking even before in electrical, roughly, back in 2015, 2016. If it was just about operating expenses, it wouldn't be an issue. The reason for the rate increases in the first place is exactly what Councilmember Schuman said earlier, which is the heavy infrastructure needs we have. And, when Mr. McManus talks about 60 years of neglect, I mean, that's framing it in, I'm not saying that all past councils and all past staff completely neglected everything, but there's no doubt, and I said this for years before we ever increased the rates, is we kept kicking the can on infrastructure. There's probably some explanations as to why, and each council could tell you why. I know we had a recession. That was one reason why, that we weren't able to spend lots of money on infrastructure projects during, the ensuing years after 2008. But the rate increase was necessary because of a huge aging infrastructure need. And you can't just talk about these things in a vacuum and not and throw that aside, because the infrastructure needs were the only reason we did it in the first place. And not just based on a 5-year plan on infrastructure, it was a 10-plus year plan. And because we had to especially get our electrical utility back up to where it needs to be. And we're just barely starting into that. There is a pacing issue, because you can only go so fast. There's only so much you can do in any given year. I mean, in an ideal, perfect, utopian world, you would redo all your utility infrastructure all at once. But you can't do that, because you don't have enough resources to do it. You don't have enough staff to do it. You have to, you can't just shut down everybody's utilities all at once and just redo every part of the utility system all at once. So this, of necessity, is tapered in over time. And so that's why you have revenues in excess of expenses in the early years, because you've got 10 to 15 plus years of projects going out. And any discussion about whether it's enough or not enough has to review those projects and what the needs are. You can't just pretend like they don't exist. Otherwise, we're right back to square one where we started in 2015 and 2016, which is kicking the can. And the utilities don't get any younger. They get older and older and older. So in terms of in terms of our ability to review these things, that's true. We need to be reviewing these rate increases annually at least. We do that as part of our capital improvement plan in December, which carries forward through the budget cycle. We do it as part of our budget cycle when we have the workshops. We can and should have periodic workshops on these things to try to figure it out. But you can't do a rate study every 6 months or every year. I don't know, what do we estimate the rate study is going to cost us?
We've budgeted $200,000. I don't expect it to be more than that. If anything, it'll come in less than that.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you've ever heard me talk before, you know how I feel about studies. I don't love studies for the reason that they cost a lot of money, and, garbage in, garbage out. You don't always get the greatest data coming out of the studies if they're not done correctly. However, on something as important as utilities, you need some expert consulting help on these things to really be able to digest what the real needs are. You have to look, the experts, the professionals have to look at, they can't just look at it in a vacuum either. They have to look at 10 years out or 15 years out and see what the needs are. Because if you're just planning past the end of your nose 1 year at a time, then you're just going to get further and further into a hole. And that was the problem in the first place. Our water utility is different than our other utilities because we have some special needs here in Boulder City that are different from other jurisdictions. It is true, Mr. Tyler's numbers, I'm not sure if those numbers are accurate, but it is true that we do pay slightly more in water than City of Henderson, I believe. I haven't looked at the numbers lately. But overall, our utilities are far and away less than other jurisdictions in southern Nevada. Our electric is a full third less than other utilities anywhere in southern Nevada. But our specific needs in water are, as Mr. McManus has pointed out several times over past meetings in the last few months, we have this big raw water line debt. It's a big number. It's, we paid down our other 4 or 5 debts, but we still have this one. And none of us created that debt, but we still have to pay it down. It's $26 million plus another $10 million in interest. And so to pretend like that debt doesn't exist, you can't do that and you can't, just like you can't pretend like the infrastructure doesn't exist. You have to look at that. And so, we could actually save ourselves $10 million in interest or $5 million or whatever if we aggressively paid that down and paid it off. Is it appropriate to look at other funding sources? Yes. Boulder City is unique in that regard as well. We do have solar lease revenues, but we also have, restrictions on our ability to incur debt and spread things over time. And so, yes, we need to look at these things often. We need to look at them annually at least, but you can't do a rate study annually, but we are going into a rate study. We did create a utilities department last summer. We hired our utilities director just a few months ago. We moved for and created the Utilities Advisory Commission just recently as well. And yes, that's an important part of what the Utilities Advisory Commission could do, is to be involved in getting the citizens involved, giving feedback. To the extent we have expertise on that committee and commission, they can weigh in on that and help us understand it. But to hijack that committee's job in advance and say, no, we don't need to do this, that's wrong. Because in 2016, when we raised the rates, it was to cover all these needs. And it was, at the time, it was $125+ million in infrastructure needs. And has been pointed out many times on various different projects, costs continue to rise on that. So what was $125 million back then maybe is $175 million or $200 million today. It's hard to know until you have another rate study. Do we need to do another rate study? Yes. But the day you get the rate study, it's old. And you can't do them every month. So we need to let that process go forward so we have the best information we can have at our fingertips and then make a decision based on that. We can't do it in a vacuum. I kind of agree that the wastewater, the sewer is inconsequential relative to those other two utilities. We're better than other jurisdictions on that, but that particular one wouldn't make a difference one way or the other. Compared to the other two, it is inconsequential. So I disagree that we're ahead of target. I think we're still way behind target. I don't know the exact number that we're behind, but I know that we're way behind because we have $26 million plus $10 million in debt to pay off. We have an upside-down water utility. A couple of years ago, the Southern Nevada Water Authority increased our rates. Mr. Ensminger was here tonight and didn't talk about that, but that was passed through and it's part of it. I don't disagree that maybe, one area we should look at is the service charge, because, no two utilities do it all the same. You can compare apples to oranges all you want. You can compare Boulder City to Henderson to Mesquite to New York City to Houston, Texas. Doesn't matter. You will not find a gold standard right way to do it. One does not exist. They're all different because they are all unique communities, and Boulder City is unique in terms of what our infrastructure needs are, what our size is, how we operate our utilities, and on and on and on. You can't compare exactly. We try to keep our utilities less than what other jurisdictions that are around us pay. And, people that move in from Pennsylvania, they go, wow, what's everybody complaining about? Because you guys are so low. I pay 3 or 4 times as much from where I come from. That's not to say that, we still shouldn't try to keep them low. We do. But you can't just pay for things out of thin air. You have to pay for them with something. One of the criticisms that we had to deal with when we were actually, it's kind of funny how this comes full circle, but back in 2015 and 2016, everybody was talking about you need each utility to be self-sustaining, and you should not pay for utility infrastructure needs and utility operations with other funds. You should pay for utility infrastructure needs with utility rates. That was what we were told by everybody that stepped up to the microphone. You need to do it that way, not pay for it with some other funds from somewhere else. And even people suggested it would be not responsible to pay for with solar lease revenues. I'm not saying that's the case. But that's a debate that needs to happen, and that needs to be with data on the table and with information about, if we're taking that, exactly how much do we have? Is that really going to make a big difference in the overall amount? Because when you're talking about $1.5 million a year or something like that, maybe it does. But compared to $200 million in infrastructure costs, maybe it doesn't. That's something that somebody has to do the statistical analysis on and tell us if it's, what kind of dent it's going to make in there. And, so the goal of all of this was to take care of our debt, take care of our infrastructure needs, get it back up to snuff, and it was that one day, we could either give a rebate or we could reduce these utility rate increases, or we could get rid of them altogether. But part of the reason that we got into the hole we got into is because there weren't annual increases, and what costs were in 1990 are not what costs are today. There is inflation, like it or not. The comment that was made at the end there that instead of doing a flat annual amount, could you do something that fluctuates with some other CPI index that's not exactly 2.5% a year? Yes. That's something we could look at as well. But again, there's no perfect system for doing that, and it's part of the process. So I personally think that we need to allow this process to go forward like it is going forward. Do we need to accelerate it? I hope so. That's good. But we're barely 3 years into these. We're not even 3 years into these utility rate increases. They started in the fall of 2016, and we're the spring of 2019. So we're 2.5 years into these things. And we don't have all the data completely yet to make that decision, certainly not in front of us tonight. We don't have the 10 to 15 year capital plan in front of us. So, in my opinion, to do anything other than defer the increases to the fall would be a knee-jerk reaction that's not warranted. It's, I don't like paying utilities any more than anybody else, but I'm not going to whisper, cloud nine things in people's ears just because it's something that they want to hear. The reality is, we went through 5 or 6 workshops and public meetings back in 2015, 2016. We grappled with how to do it. We got public input for those that were willing to participate. Honestly, we didn't get a whole lot of participation. Letty Zimmerman came to she was the only person that came to one of the workshops. And I think if I recall correctly, Eric Lundgaard came to one of our other meetings. We didn't get a lot of participation. I would hope this time around we get more participation and more input. But it's easy to play armchair quarterback and say, I don't like utility rate increases, because none of us do. We all agree with that, but that doesn't make for a healthy utility system, and it's not the way we should look at things. We need to really analyze the data, and anybody worth their salt will tell you that. You have to figure out what the true numbers are, and you have to plan into the future, and you do the best you can with the data you have at the time, and maybe you do a utility rate study every 4 or 5 years if you can afford to do it and if it's necessary. I think it is necessary. That's why we already queued it up before Councilmember McManus even brought this forward. And so it's easy to read history backwards, and if you weren't involved, to say, well, why'd you do it that way, or why'd you do it that way? I mean, I get it. There's lots of ways you can do it. There's 100 ways that we can skin this cat, but there's no perfect way. I'll guarantee you that. And it's not true that we don't have needs. This money is already spent years in advance because we have such huge needs, especially on our electrical infrastructure. And if you've come to any of those meetings, you know that. That's a long, long list. We can have debate over, do we not want to do that project, or is that project necessary or not? But that debate has happened, and has been said by many people in the public comment. We do have the data, and it was the data we had at the time. Whether it's still good data, we won't know until we have the new rate study. And so, again, I think it would be irresponsible to kick the can further because we've already gone through that process. And let's just go through this process again and dial in on exactly what it should be going forward as best as we can. It won't be perfect. 5 years from now, there will be other people that will criticize us for what we do this time around because nobody has a crystal ball. You do the best you can with the data you have at the time, based on the studies you have, based on expert help, and you try to project out what the remaining useful life is of your utility infrastructure. And we create rebate programs. We try to have reserves in case of emergencies. You do all of that. We've been doing all of that. I hope that the rate studies come back and say, we're good. We don't need to keep raising rates. I don't know that that's the case, and I don't know that anybody in this room can say that's the case until we really analyze it. And it's easy, again, to play armchair quarterback and pretend like we know everything, but it's not the case. We don't. We really need to see the data. And so I don't know that we can vote on any deferral tonight. I have a question for a second. We can't really vote on any deferral tonight, correct? Because it's not on an agenda.
You can provide it, staff directive.
So to come back on voting, Mr. McManus.
Yes, I'd like to respond to some of the last several minutes here without the use of a lot of cliches. One of the statements is, we haven't raised rates since 2009. Well, that was at close to the bottom of a recession when rates were raised on people. So when we make statements about, well, gee, we've tried to protect things in the past, well, no, actually, you raised rates last time at the very bottom of the recession. Excess surpluses. When we look at these funds right now, there is money already budgeted in there for capital projects. We are not just paying day-to-day expenses. For instance, in the water utility fund, there's $1.5 million in capital projects. In the wastewater fund, there's $800,000 in capital projects. In the electric fund, there's $6.389 million in capital projects. So to say that, well, we have to have this extra money because we have these projects are budgeted in, and we still have surpluses. So do I understand that there's a need to accumulate surpluses? Certainly. You're going to have expenses down the road. But the fact is, we're already budgeting millions of dollars every year for these projects, and we're still running surpluses. We're still running above what the projections were. Further, capital projects, we keep talking about them. I think it was brought up earlier tonight about the BC tap transformer. I believe the cost of that was $1.2 million, and it's still sitting there doing nothing. A year after its purchase, it's not been installed, it's not doing the job that it was purchased to do, it's just sitting there waiting. Okay? The 69 kV line, I've heard about that project for years now. It's necessary so that we can have a complete loop around the city's electrical system. That was voted on, and then it was brought back after it was approved. 600 letters were sent out to residents saying, well, what do you think about this, after we had approved it? Okay? The mayor had a lot of folks turn up and say, well, we don't want that, after we had already voted on it. That's another one of these projects that's been put off and put off. The price keeps going up on it and costing us more down the road. To make the suggestion that what I've proposed tonight is a knee-jerk reaction or some type of armchair quarterbacking, again, I think that goes far away from the information that I requested to have be put into the packet, as well as the additional information that the utility director had placed in there. There's very solid information in there as far as what these excesses are and the reasons why we don't need this 2.5% automatic increase. Again, automatic increases are just that. They're automatic. They're not based on anything else other than somebody saying, well, we'll just do 2.5%. That's kind of what inflation is each year. Well, we don't see our costs go up by 2.5%, and yet we get that type of increase. The comparison, the false comparison all the time, well, we're still cheaper than Vegas. Well, we should be. That's part of why we're so fortunate here in Boulder City, is they built this town while they were building that big generator down there in the middle of the river. Well, we're still cheaper than the other places. That just doesn't hold water, so to speak. Also, getting back to, we're trying to get more information, we're trying to get more input. 6 months ago, Councilman Harhay and I worked to get a utility commission formed. It was kicked down the road saying, well, let's wait until we hire a utility director. Well, we could have been going through the process just as we are now to get that committee formed. And now we're just months behind on doing that. So now they're going to spend months having to get up to speed. Time's already been lost on that. With regard to the data, the statement was made that, you have a rate study. Well, the day after it's done, the data's old. That's true. It's 1 day old. When you have a rate study that's 4 years old, then it's time to look at that data and say, you know what? I wonder if that's still accurate. So we have a 4-year-old rate study that says, well, at the end of all these other rate increases, just start throwing 2.5% a year on there. And yet when we look at these budgets, we see, well, wait a minute, we keep getting these surpluses. So again, I think it's very clear we don't have to do the 2.5% now. We can wait for the rate study to be done. We can wait for this utility committee to get up to speed, for our utility director, our public works directors to get a better feel for the projects that are necessary. This 2.5% is just a burden on the ratepayers. It's not a surplus for the city that we need right now.
Any further discussion?
Yes, I have some comments. I have a question for the city clerk. In the agenda, this agenda item 14 is shown as 3 separate resolutions: 6926, 6927, 6928. However, in the agenda packet, there's no wording for these resolutions. And I would have expected to see the wording for the resolution is the same format as the prior resolution that was being repealed. Because as it is, there's no replacement. All it says, we're repealing the prior, like in the case of 6926, we're repealing number 6489. So I don't even know if we can act on anything tonight.
Councilman Hari, I think I might be able to help you with that. This agenda item is worded for possible action on the repeal. Normally what we would do if we are going to go ahead with the repeal is we would direct the city attorney to come up with these resolutions. I didn't write the resolutions initially. My recommendation is to repeal the automatic increases that are in there, and that would be the direction given to the city attorney, is to write new resolutions that would do so. And we can do that tonight. We can give direction to the city attorney. Is that correct, Mr. City Attorney? Thank you.
So in effect, you're only specifically talking about the 2.5% rate increase. There's no discussion regarding the connection charges, which is the thing that I kind of hold close to my heart to reduce in some manner.
And I would urge you to suggest a council agenda item, and I will support you on that, sir.
The other question before my prior comment, I had mentioned the one possibility that could be done fairly simply is the 6-month deferment that we could do right now. What effect that would have, especially if we put some stipulations in there that this would take place after the advisory committee was up and running, because I really feel we should have that citizen input. But what the effect would be on the yearly rate, since it would only be in effect for half a year, it would mean that there was actually only a rate increase of 1.25%, and instead of the 2.5, because it only run a half a year. And as a result of the input from the Citizens Advisory Committee and other sources, before that 6-month deferment ends, we would then move to have this repealed or replaced in a way I would hope that would include connection fees. I'd like to take care of it in one swipe to give some comfort to the folks who are paying electric bills, who have no way to conserve because the connection fees are regressive. No matter what you use, they're still stuck with that $86 to $90 connection fee every month. So that really has to be addressed. I think that's even more important than the rate increase, especially for seniors that are struggling to survive here in town. I think it's essential to incorporate that as well. But again, I would revisit my idea of deferring for 6 months with the stipulation that get the input from the advisory committee, and also again to have a workshop with the city council to discuss the replacement that would take place at the end of that 6 months.
So I'll go ahead and turn that into a motion because I'm not in favor of, without data, repealing these resolutions, but I do agree that we should direct staff to defer the rate increases or to come back with a resolution to defer the rate increases to, I would just say, October. That's approximately 6 months. And I certainly don't mind directing staff to come back at the appropriate time to look at the service charges. But we're going to be looking at all of the data. So, I mean, that's the main directive I would make, is to defer for 6 months. And I'd turn that into a motion.
The rate increase, it would only be a 4-month delay. It's not scheduled to go into effect until July 1. Therefore, if you're going to delay it 6 months, it would be January 1 for the 6-month delay.
I would agree.
Okay. I'm fine with that. January 1. I'll amend my motion accordingly.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any further discussion? Okay. We're on to item number 15, the City Manager's Report. Mr. City Manager.
Mayor and Council, there's no information to share out of the ordinary on those two reports.
Okay, we're to our final public comment period. Anyone wishing to speak in final public comment? Mr. Turner.
Ray Turner. I'm one of those people that rarely goes to any of the workshops or the workshops you guys put on and stuff. And to be quite honest with you, I don't expect to get much from them, because I find that when studies are done and companies are hired, consultants, they come and they deliver an outcome that, that you guys want. I don't have any faith in it. I don't trust you guys. I'm talking about the council, not anyone in particular, but we don't trust you. We just don't trust you. And it's such an act. It's so obvious that things are rehearsed and planned ahead of time. And we come here, we want discussion. We want to see genuine community leadership and open discussion, and not this, it's so obvious that it's all phony. And that's why I don't attend those workshops and meetings. Thank you.
Thank you.
Crystal Hoskins, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the water waste that the city actually does that we pay for. There is extreme overwatering going on the lakeside during the canal area. I ride my bike nightly. I'm going through quite a bit of water every night, ruining shirts from the splash up from the tires. And maybe we could cut back a little bit of the grass, because it's a lot of grass too.
Thank you. I will agree. I've ridden through those channels, and there's a lot of water coming through there. Others?
Would it be appropriate for me to make a public service announcement?
Sure. We got one more public comment, I think.
Before everybody leaves.
Judy DeShane. I just was going to make a correction for the record, maybe. The name of Mr. Donnelly's company is Cooper, not Copper. It's 2 O's and 1 P. Copper is the opposite, 1 O and 2 P's. I just thought I'd let everybody know.
No, dang it. Either way, Mr. Donnelly's got a lot of free advertisement tonight. Any others? Glenn.
My name is Glenn Fan. Good evening again. I've got just a kind of a comment. There's been a big push by the city for pushing the swimming pool project, $40 million plus. And everybody says that no, the city's not pushing it. It's just education about the ballot. Well, my question is, I don't know how many meetings they've had now. It's been 6 or 8 or whatever, recently, whatever. But, I haven't seen any classes, shall we say, or instructions about the other ballot questions. Why aren't we having an equal number of city-sponsored informational meetings about the OHV project? Just the water project. I don't think the city should be pushing any ballot one over the other. So I'm looking forward to when we're going to have these classes before the coming June election on all the ballot questions, and not just the water, the water park. Just my thoughts. I think it's only fair that you instruct the public about all the ballot questions with the same amount of information and time and energy as you are on the one. Thank you.
Thank you. Any others, please?
Linda Barnett. When Notre Dame was burning, there was a really beautiful quote in the Times. It said something like, "We've failed as a civilization to be caretakers of this priceless history." It really made me think of Boulder City. So I wanted to specifically thank Ray Turner. When Ray came on the scene here, it was all about historic preservation. I had to laugh when somebody was citing Ray that he shouldn't have been on the Historic Preservation Committee because some other girl who lived in the historic district was going to be better than he was. I'd like to thank Councilman McManus, Ray, and the Boulder City History and Arts for really caring enough about that building to want to raise money to pay for that roof. And as higher power would have it, they contacted Mr. Donnelly, however it came through. I just think they have made such a big difference in this town, and I think everyone is waking up to historic preservation, that we will not move the gardens to a different spot. I don't know if it was you, Mr. Noyola, but I was amazed today that the sculpture garden was cleaned up. It looked beautiful. I'm not sure who was responsible for that, but thank you. Was it you?
It was city staff.
Yay, bravo. So I hope we'll okay, well, whoever it was, thank you.
Hey.
I hope it's, what will keep happening. It looked beautiful today. I was amazed. And I just, again, want to thank Boulder City History and Arts, Councilman Ray, and whoever really cares about this town. I think we're seeing a turnaround. We did lose the hospital. I didn't live here. It wasn't a big deal to me, but it meant the world to a lot of people, and we lost it because nothing was in place. So we're hoping that that's going to be changing, and thank you for everyone who cares enough to be a part of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any others?
Mayor, Council, Victor Miller, resident of Boulder City. And I just want to say we saved the hotel. So we've been doing saving our history for a long time, and a lot of people worked very hard on that. We shouldn't forget that this has been an effort for a long time in Boulder City to save our history and our historical nature of our community. And so I'm glad it's continuing to go on, but it's nothing new. It's something that has been historic. Thank you.
Thank you. Others? Okay, we'll close our final public comment and move to City Council reports. Yes, public service announcement.
So, and I'm sorry for not mentioning this earlier, but I just wanted to know, since there is a lot of energy around rates and the utility funds, we do have the volunteer forms out there on the internet. To date, we've only received 6. there's obviously a lot of people who are interested in obviously how those funds are structured and how we pay for the, all of our expenses and how the budgets are arranged. So I guess I'm making a public service announcement to feel free and apply because we do need more than, obviously, we need a minimum of 7. Right now we have 6. I intend, at least for now, to leave it open for a minimum of another couple of weeks, but it would be appreciated if we could get more folks to apply.
Thank you. Okay, council reports. Mr. Harhay, do you have anything?
No, I'd just like to second Mr. Schuman's request for volunteers. I would like to get our Citizens Utility Commission up and running as soon as we can, but we'd like to have the best possible folks with the best possible skills to sit on that to advise the council. So, again, I encourage anyone that feels that they can have significant input into our decision-making for personal utility issues to contact the city clerk. I think it's online as well. You get a volunteer form, fill it in, and hand it in. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilwoman Levitt.
Mr. Mayor, in collaboration with the LVCVA and the Chamber of Commerce, we hosted the 2nd annual Boulder City Showcase at Cascada last Friday. It was a great venue for for this event, and it really showcased Cascada as well because, as you all know, it's not a private golf course anymore, so it does host public events. So I hope they got some business out of the showcase. We had more Boulder City vendors than we did last year. We had 20 vendors and probably 40 to 50 participants, meaning tour groups, smaller tour groups, and meeting and party planners. It was very successful. We had a lot of connections were made, not only between the vendors and the participants, between vendor and vendor. So I think it was very successful. Also, this Friday is a historic home tour. I think it's the first time we've ever done this in Boulder City. I just asked Alan before the meeting. I think there still may be tickets available, and you can go on the NevadaPreservation.org website to get tickets. And that this historic home tour was as a result of holding the showcase last year. Jill asked me to announce Spring Jam is coming up the first weekend in May. They have many more attractions and events than they did last year. It'll be very exciting, so I hope everyone gets out and supports that event. And also the same day, it's a very busy day at Veterans Cemetery at 10 o'clock. They have the disposal of unserviceable flag ceremony. I've attended that a couple of times, and it's a very moving ceremony. And basically what they do is they take all the flags that have been taken out of service because they're in disrepair, and they have a ceremony around that. And the proper disposal of flags, of course, is to burn them. So people who come and participate, they show such reverence for the flag and the proper protocol for not just folding the flag, but like I said, for disposing of them. And then people can take a flag and then go the outdoors. They have a fire pit and throw the flags in the fire pit. And then last year they had a helicopter fly over at the end of that ceremony. But it's at 10 o'clock on the same day as Spring Jam, which I think is May 4th. So anyway, I just wanted to announce it because for anyone who is interested in Veterans Affairs, it's a really special ceremony to participate in. So that's it for me.
Thank you. Mr. McManus.
A couple things. One, my apologies for being late earlier for the RDA meeting. I was at a Southern Nevada Regional Planning Coalition Board meeting that ran a little long. It looks like that entity may finally make some progress on some things. Second item, I was at the pool-packed annual conference last week up in Reno. That is our insurance provider. They also provide support services for our human resources. It is an organization that many other small towns and the smaller rural counties belong to. It does a great service for us. I think our staff can attest to some of the benefits we get from that. And it also provides us insurance protection that we would probably find very expensive elsewhere. Unfortunately, they are going to up our rates a little bit this year. So, we can't always be perfect, but from what I see of that organization, they do Boulder City a great service. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for their service on those committees. Mr. Schuman. All right, well, thank you for being here tonight, everybody. We'll see you next time. Meeting adjourned.
Good night.
Good night, Warren.
Good night.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Good evening, everyone. I'm going to welcome you on behalf of the mayor to our redevelopment agency meeting. And he will take over from here.
All right. Thank you. We'll call this meeting to order, and our first item is public comments. Anybody wishing to speak on an agenda item? Seeing none, we'll close public comment and move to our agenda. Item number 1 is approval of the minutes of the February 26, 2019 RDA meeting.
Mr. Mayor, I'll move for approval of the minutes.
I'll second. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. We have Mr. Harhay on the phone as well.
I vote aye.
So that's unanimous. Item number 2 is resolution number 213, a resolution of the redevelopment agency regarding certain eligible improvement costs related to 800 Nevada Way.
Good evening, Chairman and RDA board members. Rafi Fastikjian, Economic Development Coordinator for the city. The owners of Boulder City in BCMI LLC are proposing to invest $9,771 to construct a new vintage sign to replace the old, outdated one. The property was purchased by BCMI last year, is located at 800 Nevada Way, and was formerly known as the Desert Inn Motel. BCMI LLC would be eligible for up to 50% reimbursement of funds invested through the city's RDA commercial signage grant program. Based on eligible expenses, they could receive up to $4,885 in reimbursement. The RDA budget is $150,000 for this fiscal year. To date, 2 grants have been approved, totaling $23,880. BCMI previously received funding under RDA Resolution number 210 for the amount of $17,130 for exterior improvements. Eric from BCMI is here tonight to answer any specific questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to come on up?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Hi. Any questions or comments, Council? Commission.
Well, while we have you up here, I was just wondering what is going to happen to the old pool location there.
We're actually working on it right now. We're putting a whole new deck. We're closing off the pool, seal the pool off, and putting a whole new patio there.
Okay. Well, I also like to say that I'm loving driving by there and watching you guys beautify that property. It's really coming along.
Thank you very much.
Doing a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just wanted to comment that I like your choice of signs.
Okay.
So, great job.
Thank you.
It'll be a great improvement.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anything, Mr. Harhe?
No, I like the design.
All right, great. Well, I'll go ahead and then make a motion for approval. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously.
Okay.
Thank you for being
Thank you
here
very
tonight.
much.
Congratulations. Item number 3 is resolution number 214 for grant funding for certain eligible costs related to Boulder City Company Store, 525 Avenue B. Mr. Festekjan.
Yes, that item has been removed from the agenda.
Okay. So we'll be on to item number 4, resolution number 215, appropriating $150,000 to the Utility Capital Reserve account from revenues derived under the Capital Improvement Special Projects Program.
Yeah, in the fiscal year 2008, the Redevelopment Agency Board set policy to set aside $150,000 to the Utility Capital Reserve account to be used for eligible utility infrastructure improvements. These funds may be used for the purpose of repairing and/or upgrading eligible utility infrastructure that directly or indirectly serves the RDA plan area in the event of failure would cause harm to the RDA plan area. City Code 1-9-7 requires that the Redevelopment Agency Board to consider transferring the funds. When this was last presented to the board, it was recommended not to proceed with the transfer. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions or comments? Ms. Levitt.
Mr. Mayor, I believe that we should follow that same precedent that we set last year and not transfer these funds, because I think that there's potentially new businesses coming online that can use this redevelopment money. So that would be my recommendation.
Okay. Any others? Mr. Harhe, you have any comments?
No comment.
Mr. McManus, anything?
No.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do you want to turn that into a motion then?
I move that we not proceed with this.
We don't need a motion.
Don't answer then. Okay.
All right. Sounds like no action unless there's further discussion. All right, now we're on to our final public comment period. Anyone wishing to speak in final public comment of the redevelopment agency meeting? Okay, seeing no one, we'll adjourn the RDA meeting and we'll start our city council meeting in about 20 minutes. Thank you.
Excuse me, Sir Legs-a-Lot.
How's a girl supposed to go about her business if you've got socks in every single dryer in this joint?
Well, I suppose you're just going to have to wait. I should be done in 3 or 4 hours.
3 or 4 hours? But I don't even have a full load.
This looks like an opportunity for compromise.
Oh, my goodness, Dr. Broccoli, I watch your show every day.
Where'd you come from?
Never mind that, Pinky. Now, let's see if we can find a way to work together so that we all leave here with dry feet. Or whatever those things are.
Hey!
You, sir, obviously have more than your share of socks to dry. Why don't you let Pinky here put some of her laundry in with yours? And Pinky, perhaps you could give him half of the quarters you were planning to use.
That would be fair.
Yeah, that's okay with me, too.
Oh, that's wonderful. We all win when we use compromise to solve our problem.
Could I get your autograph?
Compromise isn't selling out. It's the way our democracy works. Wait a minute.
Sorry, lady, but you can't park your bike on this here sidewalk.
But I'm working here. I'm a delivery bird, for pizza's sake.
Later that night, Pinky got together with all of her fellow delivery birds, and they formed a special interest group.
We've got to overturn this law that says delivery birds can't park their bikes on the sidewalk. Who's with me?
The SWDBU went on to urge legislators to change the law prohibiting the parking of bikes on sidewalks, but met fierce resistance from another special interest group, Concerned Citizens for Uncluttered Sidewalks. After hearing both sides, lawmakers added an exemption to the law that allowed delivery birds to park their bikes on the sidewalks temporarily while making their deliveries. Both groups called the decision a success. That's the role that special interests play in our democracy, giving voice to groups of like-minded individuals so that everyone's ideas are represented in our government.
Hey, Bruce, we ought to eat these red bugs for lunch.
What, are you crazy? Those red bugs will go straight to your hips. Now, these blue bugs over here, these guys are delicious. Let's eat them for lunch.
No way. Blue bugs will kill you. High in the sodium. You're nuts, Bruce. We're eating the red bugs.
Blue bugs.
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 Red bugs.
Blue
Red
bugs.
bugs. Red
Just as Pinky and Bruce had a hard time agreeing on what to eat, people disagree about the laws they want to pass and which policies to adopt. The arguments that legislators have with each other in Congress and state legislatures are reflections of the disagreements among we, the people.
There sure are a lot of us. Do you ever feel like you just don't have a voice?
What are you talking about? Send an email to your state legislator.
Huh? Who's that?
That guy right there.
Hey, what's up? Your state and federal legislators are your voice in our government. They don't speak for themselves, they speak for you. That's why it's crucial for you to be involved with who represents you. In last year's election, only 62% of these birds even registered to vote. And of that 62% who registered, only 2/3 of them bothered to vote. That means only 2 out of 5 are using their voice. What a shame. And voting isn't the only way to get involved. You can pay attention to what goes on in government and call, write, or visit your state and federal representatives. You can also join special interest groups with other like-minded citizens to let your representatives know how you feel. There are so many ways to get involved, and you definitely have a voice. Now go out there and use it.
Hey, how you doing? Hey, girl, Nicole, good luck on the play tonight. You're welcome. What's up, guys? Now you're gonna make sure that you return those on Monday, right? Thank you. Oh, nice.
Quit talking, you for a second. Go ahead, get your wallet. Come on, let me get your wallet. Just get out the way.
guys want to do?
I don't know. What do you want to do?
I don't know. What do you want to do?
One, two, ready, go. Gonna pull the stops, gonna make it go. Drop down, gagged and bound, just sitting down and getting nowhere. You're living on a wing and a prayer. Gonna put them things together. You know it's now or never. The building will be
What do you guys want to do now? Okay, now you ready? Now, just like I showed you.
Yeah.
Now push in the clutch
Yeah.
and gently shift it in the first gear.
I remember, okay.
Okay, that was good. Oh, honey, look this way. Look this way. Honey, hit the gas a little more. Hit the gas. Oh. Okay. No. I put your hands on the wheel. Hey, honey, it's okay. You're doing great. You're driving. And once you just pull over right here. That's perfect. Brake.
Thank you, Dad.
Look at this guy. What are you gonna do, kid? Go home. It's hopeless. Yeah, dude, do something with your life. Leave. You're looking stupid, man. Give it up.
Dave, it's their boss. You're giving me a shit. It's Saturday. You really need time.
Hey, Shane. Welcome back. Our contestants reached the final round, where he's faced with 3 difficult choices. Behind curtain number 1, more alcohol than your body could ever survive. Behind curtain number 2, dangerous, mind-altering drugs. And behind curtain number 3, we have your family, your friends, and your self-respect. All right, Luke, what's it gonna be? Come on, Luke. 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 You want another beer?
Oh, hey, look, that's my sister. Hey, Nicole, isn't your dad supposed to be here? He's coming. He promised. I trust him.
Campaign ad tested extremely well. I can't tell you how excited.
Sorry, I gotta go.
Showtime, guys. 1 minute.
bombs drop, going from doing something very calm and relaxed to rushing into a fire when everybody else is coming out is a very unique thing, and it's very rewarding when you can make a difference, when you can hold somebody's hand when they're in their time of need, when you can give that comfort, when you can make a difference. It truly is the most rewarding career that I know of. Boulder City Fire Department utilizes reserve firefighters to supplement their staffing. Annually, we conduct a proficiency school, which is a process that we do to test our incoming cadets. Early on in the process, I try to take the time to come out during their training sessions and meet and let them get to know me as the fire chief. And during that process, I talk to them about what they're getting ready to enter. Even though it's a fairly short proficiency school, fire proficiency school that they go through, there is a lot to learn and a lot to do. And one of the biggest things that I talk to them early on in the process is another requirement is they have to pass the physical agility test, or the candidate physical agility test. It's called CPAT in the fire service. And basically this test has been developed which shows us that they have the physical ability to do the job. And it can be very demanding. And so early on in the process, I walk up and down the line and I tell them, if there's one thing you need to start working on right now is your ability to pass that test. congratulations to all of you. It was a lot of hard work. I saw all of you working very hard. You participated in many things. Thank you for your support of the fire department, and thank you for your commitment to this program. It's another step in a journey that I hope will take you a long time in your fire service career. I've had a great time so far in mine, and I just want to say thank you for your commitment and congratulations.
So excited that 2015 marks the beginning of our celebration of our 125th anniversary since our founding. We have so many great things planned, ways to reflect on our past, to consider the amazing women who started this organization, but most importantly, the women who have built it to what it is today. 125 years of service to God, home, and country. In October of 1890, there were 4 women who came together to organize a society. 2 were from the North, 2 were from the South. They wanted to unite this organization to honor the patriotism and the magnificent men and women who served to make America free. The objectives that they decided at the very first meeting were historic preservation, education, and patriotism. That's exactly what our objectives still are today. We are still actively preserving and marking historic buildings and sites. We are still promoting education through impacting thousands of children and students throughout this country. We are actively promoting good citizenship and support of our military and our veterans through our commitment of our hundreds of thousands of hours of service and of dollars as well. We have planned so many different activities for this current year, and we really want, most of all, for every member to feel a part of the celebration. Among the special activities, we'll have an expanded social media. We're going to have our own Facebook page where the chapters can tell us the stories of what they are doing in their communities and how they are celebrating our anniversary. We will also have special events at Continental Congress, so a look back in our history, but a look forward as well. We are asking each chapter to do is to consider taking on a special service project to celebrate this 125th anniversary, finding something special and doing that in your community to make everyone aware of how vital and relevant DAR is and how we are still serving America. We will also be presenting several videos throughout the year that will help tell our story. We have some remarkable items in our NSDAR archive, such as the original charter of the National Society, and we are eager to share those with our members. The more we learn about our history, the more inspired and energized I think we will all be. We will have a number of commemorative items available to celebrate this anniversary as well. Everything from a key ring to a beautiful limited edition commemorative plate, a presentation bowl, or a silver spoon. Time to encourage your relatives and your friends to become a member. This is the time to join the DAR. Please stay up to date on the blog and in the website and in the magazine so that you too will know of some of the exciting opportunities that we have. 125 years later, our members are still as passionate about historic preservation, education, and patriotism as they were in 1890. I hope you will take part in this celebration, will learn more about our history, become engaged in the work of your chapter, your state society, the National Society, and that your membership in DAR will be as important to you as my membership is to me.
As the United States marked 100 years in existence, a new sentiment arose among Americans to connect with its founding history. In the spring of 1876, Philadelphia hosted the Centennial Exposition, which helped give rise to an era of colonial revival. Patriotic organizations began to form, including the Sons of the American Revolution in 1889. The following year, the Sons voted to exclude women from the group, galvanizing a force for the creation of a new women's organization. Mary Smith Lockwood wrote in a letter printed in the Washington Post detailing the legend of Hannah Arnett, who in 1776 courageously prevented a meeting of men from proclaiming loyalty with the British. Lockwood wrote, "Were there no mothers of the Revolution? Where will the sons and daughters of the Revolution place Hannah Arnett?" Mary Smith Lockwood's letter would be a catalyst for action. William O. McDowell, founding member of the Sons of the American Revolution and great-grandson of Hannah Arnett, was immediately moved. He penned a response calling on women to form their own organization. Gatherings were held at various private residences throughout the summer of 1890 between the lead organizers, Mary Smith Lockwood, Eugenia Washington, Mary DeShay, and Ellen Hardin Walworth. The culmination of these meetings occurred on October 11th, with the first organizational meeting with 18 women in attendance, as well as 4 supportive members of the Sons of the American Revolution, who would act as an advisory board. Also in attendance was Mary Elliott Cabell, who would serve as vice president presiding and whose home would be the first headquarters for the Daughters. She would seek out a lady prominent in the United States to serve as the first President General. Caroline Scott Harrison, the First Lady of the United States, would fill that position until her death in 1892. In that first year, membership applications flooded in, and fundraising efforts commenced on the first project, to erect a monument in Fredericksburg, Virginia, to mark the birthplace of Mary Washington, mother to George Washington. On February 22, 1892, the First Continental Congress was held at the Church of Our Father in Northwest Washington, D.C. As Ellen Hardin Walworth would write in 1893, "It is not a social organization. It is an order patriotic, historical, and genealogical, and hold itself closely to these objects." This new society would harness a desire for service that would help usher in the progressive era in the United States and create a legacy for future generations of women.
Serving as your President General is the privilege of a lifetime. but having the opportunity to serve our national society during this, our 125th year, has been an extraordinary experience. As I travel from coast to coast and truly around the world, I am awed by your devotion to our ideals. You have demonstrated in thousands of ways the enduring relevancy of our mission. In projects large and small, you are fulfilling a pledge made by a small group of women in 1890 that future generations would remember, would appreciate, and would celebrate the sacrifice and values that make America the greatest nation on earth. And for that, I thank you and I salute you. I also thank Presley M. Wagoner, Honorary President General, who served as the chair of our Celebrate 125 committee during this, our anniversary year. It is a joy for me to ask her to help us honor those who created and shaped the society we celebrate this evening. Mrs. Wagoner.
Madam President General, we gather this evening in a magnificent hall in the heart of our nation's capital with a debt of gratitude to repay. A debt not only to our patriot ancestors and to the brave men and women who have worn the uniform of our nation's armed forces, but also a debt to the visionary citizens who 125 years ago laid the very foundation for this evening, who together shared an ambitious and audacious undertaking to establish a nationwide organization to celebrate and perpetuate the American spirit, our beloved and enduring National Society, Daughters of the American Revolution. Tonight, we must pause to honor the patriotism, focus, and resiliency of those early leaders who so skillfully charted a course for the generations that would follow. The now familiar facts of our founding have been repeated many times, but tonight, by sharing fragments of their hopes, their motivations, their frustrations, in their own words from those first formative years, we hope that the dreams of those visionary leaders might echo down through the decades to propel us forward further still, inspired anew in service to God, home, and country. We are fortunate that our founding members' dedication to preservation has left us with many treasures in our NSDAR archives, including much of the early correspondence, documentation, and meeting notes of our fledgling society 125 years ago. Mere months after the newly founded Sons of the American Revolution voted to exclude women from their society, a passionate supporter and advocate for female descendants of the Revolution began confidential correspondence with some of his like-minded brothers in the SAR. In a letter dated October 25, 1889, William McDowell writes,
"We shall invite the organization in the different states of the Union of the Daughters of the Revolution, independent entirely of the Sons. I'm in a hurry to get at this work that I may show the Sons what the Daughters can do. On my suggestion, the vote on the subject yesterday was not recorded in our minutes, for the reason that I wanted to save the gentlemen who voted no from being so thoroughly ashamed of themselves when they see what an opportunity they had and let slip by."
After Mary Smith Lockwood wrote her rallying cry in the Washington Post and interested women began planning the new organization, the official organizing meeting was called for October 11, 1890, and included Mary DeShay, who, as Secretary Pro Tem, recorded in those meeting minutes this resolution.
Resolved that at this, our organizing meeting, we initiate the important part of our work, the securing and preserving of the historical spots of America, and the erection thereon of suitable monuments to perpetuate the memories of the heroic deeds of the men and women who aided the Revolution and created constitutional government in America, by undertaking to do what we can towards completing the monument and the memory of Mary Washington, mother of George Washington. And we hereby call upon every patriot to send us a contribution, large and small, to our treasurer for this purpose.
Just one day after that historic meeting of the newly formed Daughters of the American Revolution, Miss DeShay sent a letter to Virginia Cabell informing her of an important assignment.
My dear Mrs. Cabell, Mr. McDowell has appointed you, Mrs. Lockwood, Mrs. Darling, Mrs. Walworth, and me as committee to call on Mrs. Harrison to ask her acceptance of the office of President General. The time selected is 4:30 p.m. tomorrow afternoon, Monday, October 13th. The ladies will meet you at the White House.
5 days after that meeting at the Executive Mansion, the Secretary to the First Lady of the United States sent a letter on behalf of Mrs. Harrison to say she would accept the position. In the days and months following, meetings and correspondence gave shape to the new society. As we all know, many ideas are often put forth but not always realized. Ellen Hardin Walworth wrote to Mrs. Cabell a suggestion to consider for the Society's motto.
My dear Mrs. Cabell, it has occurred to me that I did not suggest for consideration, as I had intended, this simple motto for our seal, Amor Patriae, love of country. It seems to me that this might settle at once an objection already urged against us in a tendency to create an aristocracy, or at least a class sentiment, as it would point to the real inspiration of the association.
From the minutes of the third and final organizing meeting on December 11, it is noted that the Executive Committee recommended that the motto, Amor Patriae, be changed to home and country. Also from this December meeting, the Vice President General presiding read aloud a telegram that had been sent from the Sons of the American Revolution.
Resolved that the General Board of Managers of the Society of the Sons of the American Revolution extend its hearty sympathy to the Daughters of the American Revolution in their organization, and it assures them of cordial cooperation in their patriotic work.
As the Daughters were finalizing their vision for the Society these first few months, William McDowell continued to show his support. In a letter to Mrs. Cabell on November 19, 1890, he writes in part,
My dear Mrs. Cabell, I received a newspaper clipping giving an account of your meeting and believe that your society has a brilliant future before it.
From the intensive meetings and correspondence of those early months, a constitution of the National Society was established. Our enduring objectives of historic preservation, education, and patriotism were detailed in that original DAR Constitution and continue to guide our work today.
Article 2, Objects of the Society. The objects of this society are 1. To perpetuate the memory and the spirit of the men and women who achieved American independence by the acquisition and protection of historical spots and the erection of monuments, by the encouragement of historical research in relation to the Revolution and the publication of its results, by the preservation of documents and relics, and of the records of the individual services of the revolutionary soldiers and patriots, and by the promotion of celebrations of all patriotic anniversaries. 2. To carry out the injunction of Washington in his farewell address to the American people, to promote, as an object of primary importance, institutions for the general diffusion of knowledge, thus developing an enlightened public opinion, and affording to the young and old such advantages as shall develop in them the largest capacity for performing the duties of American citizens. 3. To cherish, maintain, and extend the institutions of American freedom, to foster true patriotism and love of country, and to aid in securing for mankind all the blessings of liberty.
Reflecting on how the society continued to grow in that first year, prolific writer and early historian general Mary Smith Lockwood described how word spread about the purpose of the society.
Newspapers took up the cry and sent intelligence over the land. Application papers began to pour in. The American women were awakened by this revelation, and now, what is it for, was answered with, it is not for an aristocracy, but to honor the men who carried the muskets and the boys who beat the drums and fifed Yankee Doodle for liberty. For the honor of the women who served the country in their homes while the men were away fighting the battles for freedom, and that their names should be rescued from the musty annals of the Revolution, and for the first time inscribed on the pages of history as factors in making the nation.
At the First Continental Congress in February of 1892, Registrar General Eugenia Washington stressed the importance of preserving the stories and records of our Revolutionary Patriot ancestors, and the importance of verifying documentation to ensure its integrity.
The records of the services of these 1,306 patriots thus preserved form volumes of most interesting as well as valuable history. Yet this history will lose much of its value if the statements contained therein are not to be relied upon. Therefore, we recommend to the regents and delegates present to give an exact and full statement of the ancestors' service and authority for the statement. For these records, we should remember, are collected not only for present use, but shall stand through future generations as monuments to our noble sires.
Our founders knew the importance of preserving those records in an appropriately prominent home for the society. Virginia Cabell addressed the membership at the First Continental Congress and prophetically described the magnificent DAR headquarters complex where we gather annually for our conference and which serves our membership and the entire Washington, D.C. community throughout the year as a brick and mortar testament to their visionary foresight.
The building of a house beautiful, to be the property of these American women calling themselves by inherited right daughters of the American Revolution. This house will be built in or near the beautiful capital city named for Washington, the immortal. It should be the finest building ever owned by women, the fairest marbles from Vermont and Tennessee, the most enduring granite from Massachusetts and the Virginias. Purely American this structure should be. A great hall for lectures, addresses, and general conventions of the society is greatly needed. It could be utilized on many occasions to produce a certain income for its support. Offices and committee rooms are required for the business of the society, now more than 1,000 in number, and soon to number many thousands. Safes are essential for the preservation of documents and relics. There should be a library unsurpassed in all branches pertaining to the records of the Society and containing the largest, most complete collections of works upon American history.
While our beloved First President General did not live to see how our society flourished beyond those early years, she set a tone at her address to the First Continental Congress, a challenge that emboldened our early members and continues to inspire us today.
Our hope is in unity and self-sacrifice. Since the society was organized, and so much thought and reading directed to the early struggle of this country, it has been made plain that much of its success was due to the character of the women of that earlier era. The unselfish part they acted constantly commends itself to our admiration and example. If there is no abatement in this element of success in our ranks, I feel sure their daughters can perpetuate a society worthy of the cause and worthy of themselves. We now feel that this society is firmly established and in good condition for future success. It remains with us all to see that it lives and grows to greater and better ends.
Madam President General, it is a privilege for me, as the National Chairman of the Celebrate 125 Committee, to express on behalf of all daughters, past and present, our heartfelt commitment to carry forward Mrs. Harrison's charge that our society lives and grows to greater and better ends. After 125 years of accomplishment, we rise with joy to face a future bright with promise, one built upon the soundest of foundations and the most enduring of missions. I congratulate you and the National Society on 125 years of service to America. And inspired anew by the words of our founders, I also suspect that the best is yet to come. Happy birthday, NSDAR.
Thank you, Presley. It is so inspiring to know that at that organizing meeting 125 years ago, with just 18 members in attendance, that the business they carried out that day is still guiding our organization today. We are so fortunate to have been founded by such strong and visionary women. In the years that followed that formative period, daughters everywhere fulfilled the joyful obligations of citizenship and membership in tens of thousands of ways, and literally millions of lives were changed for the better as a result. New citizens, deserving students, men and women in uniform, veterans in need, all have been served by the DAR. Tens of thousands of Patriot records and grave sites preserved and protected thanks to DAR. Thousands of local sites of historic significance would likely have disappeared long ago were it not for the DAR. No single evening could do justice to the breadth and scope of DAR's impact on America during the last 125 years. So I encourage you to learn more about our amazing history, to visit our website, subscribe to our award-winning American Spirit magazine, read our publications such as The American Treasure, The Enduring Spirit of DAR. I assure you that you too will be awed by the combined accomplishment of our organization. I learn new chapters of our history every day.
At its onset, the founding members of the Daughters of the American Revolution invoked the thoughts of our country's founders. that education, above all else, is the decisive element of a democracy. The DAR built this idea to the 3 pillars of the organization and have dedicated a majority of their efforts over the past century to education programs throughout the nation. In the early 20th century, the newly formed DAR contributed financial support at the chapter level to numerous schools across the country. In 1914, the South Carolina Daughters voted to establish a school for mountain girls in the remote northwestern part of the state. Securing support from the National Society, as well as land and financial donations, the chapter opened the Tomasi DAR School in February of 1919, and today continues its educational mission. Other areas of the country also saw the creation of schools during the early 20th century, including the Kate Duncan Smith DAR School in Alabama, the Crossnor School in North Carolina, the Hillside School in Massachusetts, the Hindman Settlement School in Kentucky, and Berry College in Georgia. Today, the 6 DAR schools are funded by over $1 million annually from the DAR. Through DAR's American Indians Committee, funds are also allocated to Bacone College in Oklahoma and Chemawa Indian Preparatory Academy in Oregon to help the educational needs of Native American students. American history has always been a focus of DAR education efforts. The first DAR American History Essay Contest was held in 1898. Today, through a nationally coordinated program that encourages youngsters to learn about history in a new light, more than 4,000 schools participate in this annual contest for students in grades 5 through 8, with nearly 66,000 essays submitted yearly. The DAR Scholarship Committee awards approximately $200,000 yearly in a wide range of disciplines. Applications for DAR scholarships average more than 1,600 each year. Educating the next generation to be good citizens is also a top priority for the DAR through various programs. In 1921, after years of chapter-level citizen education programs for immigrants, the National Society published the DAR Manual for Citizenship to help educate newly arrived immigrants preparing for the naturalization process. Over the next few decades, the DAR would produce over 1 million copies of the manual. Junior American Citizens Committee is one of the Society's oldest youth-oriented committees. It reaches out to tens of thousands of students from kindergarten through grade 12 to promote patriotism in every child. To help promote the program across the country, many chapters recognize achievements through awards, as well as holding contests in creative expression and community service. With more than half of the national committees focusing on elements of education, the DAR is prioritizing this founding principle within the organization. Over the last 125 years, through its many programs for youth and adults, the DAR has given the opportunity to learn to millions of lives. With a force of nearly 1 million members since its founding, the Daughters of the American Revolution have performed a vital range of service in support of the military over the past 125 years. Founded to preserve the memory and spirit of the revolutionary patriots who fought for America's independence, the DAR extends that mission by honoring the sacrifices of all those who have continued fighting for our freedom throughout our nation's history. Patriotism, one of the founding tenets of the organization, lives within each and every daughter. While the DAR was still in its infancy, the United States found itself in conflict with Spain in 1898. Dr. Anita Newcomb McGee, then a DAR Vice President General, volunteered the organization to help screen the nurses needed by the government. The DAR Hospital Corps would be established and screened thousands of nursing applications within the next few months, sending more than 1,500 nurses to help in the conflict. During the First World War, numerous chapters volunteered their efforts to help. Members of the Cincinnati DAR knitted garments for the troops. Other chapters rolled bandages, collected clothing, and donated food for the USO. The Mercy Warren chapter of Springfield, Massachusetts, hosted first aid classes and fundraisers. After the attacks on Pearl Harbor, the DAR headquarters became a center for wartime activity. Offices throughout the DAR buildings were loaned to the American Red Cross. A day nursery was opened in the basement of Constitution Hall for the children of enlisted men whose wives were working. The DAR members also purchased over $2 million in war bonds and stamps during the course of the fighting. Through conflicts in Korea, Vietnam, and the Middle East, DAR members passionately lent their support in various ways through monetary donations and volunteer efforts. Following the attack on September 11th, the DAR worked with the Department of the Navy to sponsor the crew of the aircraft carrier USS John C. Stennis. When the ship returned to port, DAR members' support shifted to the Landstuhl Regional Medical Center in Germany, which cares for wounded military personnel. DAR members also regularly send care packages to troops overseas, always been a top priority for the DAR, and members perform more than 300,000 volunteer hours annually to support veterans programs. The DAR is one of the largest groups to serve on the Department of Veterans Affairs Voluntary Service National Advisory Committee, and DAR member volunteers are a regular fixture at VA hospitals across the country. The Daughter Support to Veterans also provides the perfect setting for capturing and recording their stories as part of the Library of Congress Veterans History Project. DAR members have also served in all branches of service themselves, including more than 600 members who served in a variety of capacities during World War II, and many more who have come after them. Whether at home or abroad, the members of the Daughters of the American Revolution serve the country that they love with the same dedication as their revolutionary patriots. Through their continuing efforts to support active duty service members and honor veterans, DAR members are committed to celebrating those who defend our nation's freedom. Honoring and preserving the memory of those who served in the American Revolution not only includes the signers of the Declaration of Independence or high-ranking military officers, but also the everyday soldier or colonist who contributed to our fight for independence. As many as 250,000 men served in the Army or militia, and countless others heroically helped with the efforts. In the first report to Congress, the newly formed Daughters of the American Revolution described that their genealogical research showed the experiences of the many unnoticed heroes and forgotten heroines who composed the rank and file of the nation in 1776. Patriots like Peter Rogers, who enlisted as a fife major in the 4th Regiment, Connecticut Line, and served in Washington's Army in Pennsylvania, and William Hughes, who was a volunteer private in the 2nd New Hampshire Regiment. Other patriots contributed to the cause off the battlefield, such as Michael Gratz of Philadelphia, who signed a pledge to cease trading with the British and supplied gunpowder and firearms to George Washington's troops. Women also contributed to the fight for independence, but their efforts were often less heralded. In the early 1920s, the Daughters of the New York State Organization helped to honor a once-forgotten patriot with a burial place of honor. Margaret Cochran Corbin manned an artillery cannon after her husband was killed during a battle. She was wounded and years later was buried near West Point. Through research, the DAR linked Margaret Corbin to her heroic actions. Her body was exhumed and buried in a place of honor in the West Point Cemetery. Other women patriots also had military combat experience in the Revolution, such as Deborah Sampson, who disguised herself as a man and served in the Continental Army for 17 months before being wounded and honorably discharged. Elizabeth Zane showed great courage during the siege of Fort Henry when she volunteered to leave the fort during a pause in gun battle to fetch a keg of gunpowder and narrowly returned safely with the precious ammunition. While never directly in the line of fire, Mercy Otis Warren's strong convictions and political writings during the Revolution helped to galvanize the cause. African American and American Indian patriots also participated in the American Revolution. James Armistead, a slave, served as a spy for the Americans, while acting as a servant for British General Cornwallis. And Toby Gilmore, an African-born slave, won his own freedom by serving as a private in the Continental Army and contributing to a number of significant battles. Peter Harris, of the Catawba Nation in South Carolina, fought in the Revolution and was eventually recognized for his service. In October 2002, DAR opened the exhibit Forgotten Patriots, African American and American Indian Patriots in the Revolutionary War. It was the culmination of more than 20 years of research and based on a publication produced by DAR. To date, thousands of African American and American Indian patriots have been identified, and DAR researchers continue to work to uncover these individuals and their unique stories. Many foreign patriots also fought shoulder to shoulder with American patriots during the Revolution, including thousands of troops from France. Nationals of Sweden, Poland, Germany, Portugal, and the Netherlands also aided the American cause. Additionally, Spanish citizens provided enormous financial and military support to the American Revolution. Don Diego de Guerdeque was the financial intermediary between the Spanish court and the colonies during the American Revolution, helping to supply munitions and other military goods to the colonists. And the great Spanish military leader Bernardo de Galvez led Spanish forces defeating the British at the Siege of Pensacola. In the 1990s, the DAR formed a task force to identify Spanish nationals who contributed to the revolutionary cause. Since that time, members of the task force continue to develop a bibliography of historic events and sources that can prove Revolutionary War service of Spanish nationals. DAR's work and genealogical research has helped increase the knowledge of the patriots who helped make this country. With each new application and each new bit of information, we can have a better understanding of the sacrifices that were made in the 18th century. And with that, we can honor those heroes, one and all.
The 125th anniversary of the founding of the National Society Daughters of the American Revolution is an exciting time to be a DAR member. We have looked back into our archives and we found some wonderful videos of our past Presidents General as they have shared their memories from decades ago. And now we are digitizing those for future generations, and we have invited our current Honorary Presidents General to share their memories of their administrations and their accomplishments with us today.
I was very in awe of the organization because my mother-in-law, Lorna Owen Kemper, was chaplain general in Mrs. Spicer's administration. I, too, became responsible, feeling that I believe in education, historic preservation, and patriotism down deep in my heart. So I wanted to be a part of that.
I wanted to join, first of all, to carry on for my mother. My mother died. I joined the next year. And because so many of the family members, grandma and my cousins, and they're all, the mother, all members of DAR. So I just said, time to carry on.
I joined DAR as a junior member. I joined my mother's chapter and have been a member for many, many years. I think the reason I really joined the organization was because of a love of the objectives that it promoted. Historic preservation and education, and I was also very interested in genealogy.
I joined DAR in 1968, along with my mother and several family members. We were asked to form a new chapter, and that was named for my ancestor, Peter Houston. And after attending my first state conference in Nashville, I met so many outstanding Tennessee Daughters that I just knew I wanted to be a part of this organization.
Well, my mother was truly the driving force behind my joining the DAR. I was raised in a family where my parents instilled a very strong sense of family history and love of country. And so the first time I went to the Continental Congress 40 years ago, I knew once I had been here that this was the organization I wanted to identify with, and I wanted to become just very much involved in every aspect of DAR.
One thing that I've always enjoyed about DAR is the interactions between generations. And when I joined, I was one of the younger members, and now I'm one of the older ones, but I'm still enjoying it very much.
When I first joined DAR, I had no intention, and a lady called me. I didn't know who she was, and my second cousin had met her at a state conference and said I had recently moved to the area. And those ladies made me feel so welcome, and I don't think I would ever have become active had they not called me the week before the meeting to make sure I had a babysitter, offered to watch my son so I could go to the meetings. Several times when I didn't have a sitter, they said, bring him with you.
When I was growing up, I was always aware that I had family members who had been members of the DAR and been encouraged to join at some point. And really, after the bicentennial of our country, when all the fervor of patriotism, I decided it was a good time for me to join, so I began the application process.
Well, I enjoyed the work, and I loved to be with the members and also all the work they did with the students and scholarships and the schools, the DAR schools. I enjoyed that. Of course, I was a teacher. We raised over $777,000 for Ellis Island and helped with the restoration of the Statue of Liberty.
When we became involved in the World War II Memorial campaign to raise funds for that beautiful memorial on the mall, we became an active partner. We raised over $460,000 for that memorial and had the opportunity to work with Robert Dole, who was the volunteer national chairman.
We raised over $4.2 million for the renovation and restoration of the buildings. And the fact that the daughters gave so generously, and we could do so many wonderful things to the buildings.
My President General's project began the creation of a new digital database designed to improve operations and provide member access. The work of our genealogy department was expedited with the digitization of 800,000 applications and the accompanying 9 million support documents.
My primary goal when I was elected President General was to complete the digitization project that was begun in the previous administration. That was a continuing President General's project. A few of the proudest moments were the dedication ceremony of the Marian Anderson commemorative stamp, and it was a wonderful opportunity for there to be a wonderful relationship established between the DAR and Ms. Anderson's family.
Certainly proud of the work we did on the President General's project, especially work on the North Terrace with the flooding and stone deterioration. It was in critical need of work. We were able to, under the terrace, to build a 2,300 square foot vault just beneath that surface for collections of the society, and that was a wealth of storage space.
As crazy as it seems, Washington, D.C. experienced an earthquake. When they did the assessment of the DAR library ley-light ceiling, they discovered not damage from the earthquake, but damage from time. And our members who love Our House Beautiful so much came through with over $2 million to support the restoration of the DAR library ley-light.
Most fun activities that we implemented was our Celebrate America committee. When we met, we challenged our members to try to come up with 1 million hours of community service a year. We just asked them to record the hours they're already doing in their community. And what astonished us is the enthusiasm that the chapters developed while working together in these community projects, how they became better acquainted with their own members. And then our first year, we had over 4,760,000 hours of community service.
My advice for future people is enjoy every minute, yeah. Work hard and enjoy it, yeah.
I think one thing is very important, and that is to approach your leadership as an opportunity for service and to surround yourself with wonderful people who will help you to accomplish that.
I think it's important for people who are going to take on leadership positions to remember that their goal should be to work for the very best of the organization, to always keep in mind what the mission is, and to do their very best for DAR. I think any President General who's going to take that role needs to know that she's got to put on her running shoes and get on the track, and she won't get off for 3 years.
Always be true to yourself. And when you make a decision about anything, always be certain of what that decision will reflect on as far as the national society is concerned, and also what influence it might have on other daughters at the time. So when you look in the mirror, be true to yourself and always think about others.
I hope every member will consider becoming a leader, whether it's in her chapter or her state or the national level. What I would encourage them to do is to learn as much as you can about the DAR. Take advantage of every opportunity. Go to all those meetings, go to the workshops and the seminars, and learn as much as possible. But it's not possible to serve as President General without the full support of your family. That it truly is the biggest sacrifice, is the time with my family that I'm missing. They are completely supportive because they know that this is a rare privilege that I have for 3 years, and I'm enjoying every bit of it.
The most rewarding things as a member of DAR has been the association with ladies from all over the United States and through the units overseas. The friendships made have been just precious and dear, and I think every member will feel that way about the friendships.
The 125th anniversary is the perfect time to reflect on the energy and the mindset of our founders.
One of the things that I feel has occurred over the past 25 years is that the DAR has been able to better accommodate the busy woman, women who are working outside the home, women who have so many things going on in their lives. I think we've done a wonderful job of accommodating them in terms of an organization.
Celebrating the 125th anniversary of the society, I can't help but think back over the years and reflect on all the leaders that we've had and all the members that have done so much over the years and their dedication to the work of the society. It's really amazing when you think about it, that a small group of women